So real quick, my name is Mark Zona, and I'm going to try to invite anybody out here in here because we're going to give away a bunch of stuff today, okay? I've got some sponsors that are here. I've got some Strike King products, some Lose products, Seagar, who I've been with for many years. And really what I want to do is I'm going to start off up here. Does that sound good to everybody sitting out there? So I'm going to start off up here, but then we're going to do question answer down there, okay? And you can ask anything. I don't care what it is. If you want to talk about smallmouth in Wisconsin, if you want to talk about the NFL draft in a month, y'all got a pretty important pick this year. Whatever you want to ask, we'll definitely go through everything. But what I wanted to talk about, which is really, really cool, is I grew up fishing the Midwest, okay? Like I'm very, very lucky to travel the entire country taping Zona show. Anybody ever see Zona show? Right on, thank you. I'm lucky to go down to Texas and go down to Alabama and stuff like that, but my heart is here. Like I grew up on the south side of Chicago, which makes me a Chicago. Were you clapping for the south side of Chicago? I got news, dude. You'd be the only one clapping for the south side of Chicago. But I grew up fishing Midwest lakes, right? And what's funny was, I started fishing tournaments when I was about 9 years old, okay? About 9 years old. And I won my very first bass tournament over on the other side of the lake in Michigan. I was a shortstop in Little League. Anybody know where Homewood Flossmoor is? Do you really know where Homewood Flossmoor is? So I was a Little League playing at Isaac Walton. And that's what you're supposed to do, right? Play Little League, then you go to All-Stars and stuff like that. The first tournament, the very first bass tournament I fished, how old are you? 9. I was 9. I won $2,700 and I retired from Little League the next day. I have a very, very Italian father, and I remember coming back to the house and I had a stack of hundreds. An Italian father does one thing. Where did those come from? And what's funny is we look back on it, and that's how kind of my entire career started on August 7th in 1983. But the biggest thing that I want to talk to you all about is finesse fishing, okay? Who all out here knows what a drop shot is? Yes. Who all out here does a lot of drop shots? I see some you guys college anglers, right? You guys do a lot of drop shot, don't you? Gets bites, catches big ones, right? It's the biggest deal in drop shotting. Folks, come on in. We're gonna give stuff away today. I'm gonna try to catch a few for you. The thing with drop shotting is, it's actually an old catfish rig. It's an old river rig. Weight on the bottom, piece of meat up here, throw it out until your rod goes conk, right? It's pretty much what a drop shot is. But over the years, taping a Zona show, fishing with my buddy from Kalamazoo, Michigan, Van Dam, there's 2 enormous keys to drop shot fishing, okay? Whenever I tape a Zona show, the biggest question I get, okay? Folks, winter has lasted for 10 months. Let's catch every one of them in this tank, right? The biggest question I get during the Zona show, how far from the weight to the bait, right? Pretty much, I've read every single article about that, and I'm gonna ask you a favor, don't pay attention to them, all right? And here's why I say that is, all right, I got to get into it now, is, guys, I'm a big-time Chicago Bears fan, okay? Sorry, I am a big-time Bears fan. But here's the thing, I can't talk trash to any of you because the Bears suck, all right? I am a realist, too. I am definitely a realist. But there was one Christmas, who remembers a name, the name Willie Young? Does anybody remember the name? Would do a sack dance, would try to sack Aaron Rodgers back then. When he would sack him, he would cast out, set the hook, right? Well, I met Willie when he played on the Detroit Lions, okay? He blew his Achilles out one Christmas, blew his Achilles out, and it was Christmas Eve. There's a knock on my door, and there's Willie Young, right? I'm like, who doesn't have the defensive end from the Bears for Christmas? And it was one of those winters, not like this winter, it was one of those winters that was warm, right? Ponds were still open, and he said, hey man, take me to that pond. And I got one of those Bill Dance ponds near my house, right? One of those Bill Dance ponds where you can basically put it out like that, shake it, ooh, look at me, I got one. That's what you do in that pond. So I've got his lure, okay? I've got the soft plastic, about 18, I know you told me not to catch him all. I see you shaking your head. Guys, give him a boo. He didn't want me to catch any. So he shows up, and it's right around Christmas, and I've got his lure, okay? I've got his lure, his soft plastic, like I got here, little Strike King Baby Z2. How far you like yours? Like 15 inches, right around there. That's fair. Say it again. 10 to 12. 10 to 12, 15. And I've always, throughout my lifetime, I would say, if you genuinely get it right around 10 to 18 inches, you're gonna be in good shape. Fair to say. Okay. So Willie shows up, and we go to that pond, and the water is cold, guys. The water is very, very cold. Like that pond, even though it wasn't frozen. Give me 1 second. This is terrible. One day you're gonna have readers to do this. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So we get to that pond, and I've got his little Strike King Baby Z2, just like I have right here. And I got it set at about 15 inches, right around there. Wow, I can see now. And the water's clear, man. Water looks just like this tank, just like this hog trough. Clear. And I said, Willie, throw out there, throw in that little sand spot, and magic's gonna happen, okay? Boy, he throws out there, gets it. It's about 8 foot of water, and I can see right to the bottom. And boy, he's shaking it. He's doing the deal, right? Doing the deal. I watch a 4-pounder come and drives right by and doesn't look at it. Huh. Does it again. 4-pounder drives right by. Doesn't eat it. And he looks at me and goes, Z-Train, your Bill Dance pond sucks. Let's go celebrate Christmas, okay? But I'm mad. Like, these fish in this pond are not smart, okay? They're not smart. So Willie leaves shortly after Christmas, and I'm consumed that he did not catch 30. He never got a bite, okay? Never got a bite. So I take the exact rod, I go back, put on my little Baby Z2, and I'm getting out of the car, and the weight breaks off, right? You hate that because you got to retie it, right? And I thought, you know what? There's only about 2 inches of line, 2 inches. I'm just going to hook the weight right below the bait, okay? I go out there, I cast in the exact same sand spot. The bait is right below the weight. Boom, catch one. Boom, catch another one, and another one. And the reason why I put on that chartreuse, okay, is our fish from Memorial Day to Labor Day get pounded over and over. They get weighed in on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and then when you guys got your college tournament on the weekend, they get weighed in again. And here's what I've learned about a drop shot, okay? Warm water, what do we want? Action, right? When the water says warm, as this hog trough right here, so if you look at that weight right there and that bait, you're looking at about 18 inches. Watch when I quiver that rod. I'm barely moving that tip. What's that bait doing? Right? It's calling them. It's waving. Now watch what happens when my hand goes up that line and I'm quivering that bait. Because in our cold water, like all of our ponds, by Wednesday are gonna be wide open, right? Watch what'll happen with that bait as my hand gets closer to the bait. See that rod? Now watch as my hand goes down. Okay? So the biggest key to take from this, warmer water, more pressured fish, longer leader this year, okay? The colder the water, generally the colder the water, the less pressure, we want no action, okay? New Year's Eve, before the polar vortex set in, I was on a school of bass with a friend of mine from Humminbird, and we were fishing in about 9 feet of water, okay? 9 feet of water, and he had about a 12-inch leader, and I had about a 2-inch leader, okay? I had caught a dozen, and he said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Your leader is too long." He instantly downscaled to where it was right below the bait. The water temp was probably 38 degrees, okay? Catching them, catching them, catching them. I'll never forget this. He made a comment to me. He said, "Dude, it's kind of New Year's Eve. It's kind of New Year's Eve. I got to get home to my family." I said, "No, we're going 100 today." Anyway, long story short, it was one of the best days of the entire year due to killing the action of that drop shot, okay? The next thing, this is a big thing, next key with a drop shot, big key. I'm gonna go through my setup, I'm gonna go through my line, my hook, my rod that I use for doing this. But to me, the next critical factor for a drop shot, dude, when they're chasing the weight, they're hungry. This is perfect. All right, you guys drop shot, okay? When have the majority of bites in this tank come? Initial drop, nailed it, nailed it. Where do you guys go to college? What is it? Scream it out. Stevens Point, guys. Give it up for the Stevens Point guys. If you would have recorded that and posted it, you'd have a date tonight. I swear you would, okay? And this came from my buddy in Michigan, all right? I hang around a dude that is the Tom Brady of bass fishing. His name is Kevin. He is gonna make it in the world of bass fishing. Anybody know Kevin Van Dam? Raise your hand if you do. Okay. All right, so I want to talk to you. I'm going to tell you a story about Kevin. Kevin has more unnatural energy than I do, okay? More unnatural energy. And Kevin always talks about, who has seen one of Kevin's seminars? Cool. Kevin talks about a reaction bite, and a reaction bite. Whether it's a spinner bait, I'm not gonna smell good going through Chicago on the way home tonight. Whether it's a jerkbait, a red-eye shad, a crankbait, a spinnerbait, you always hear Kevin talking about reaction bite, okay? And I kind of grew up 20 years ago, I'd put out, who uses a 1/4 ounce a lot, right? 3/16, 1/4 ounce, yeah? I rarely have anything 1/4 ounce or lighter anymore in my boat, ever, okay? And I learned that from the days of fishing with Van Dam. If he's talking about a reaction bite and we're taping a Zona show and he's going Mach 1 on the trolling motor, by the time I throw my drop shot out there and it actually gets to the bottom, okay, my bait is back there. He has got the trolling motor on 10 and he's gone. So I'm never getting to the bottom. So what I would do, just to be efficient and for my bait to get to the bottom, I said, heck with it, I'm gonna buy a pack of 1/2 ounces. It's about 12, 14 years ago, okay? I'd be with him, my bait would get to the bottom, dunk, catch one. Dunk, catch one, right? To where he would look at me now and go, what do you got going there, boss? What's going on there, right? And I got news. My buddy Kevin don't like to give credit to anybody when you're in the boat with him. But what I quickly learned is, all right, Neil, you said you drop shot a lot. You like a 1/4 ounce too. Okay, let's say if we're all together, okay, you're in the boat next to me, and we know from January 1st to Christmas, they bite it generally, like right here on the initial drop, right? Just like they did right there. If they bite it on the initial drop, if I'm throwing a 1/4 at the beginning of the day, and you are throwing a 1/2 ounce, now I went to community college for several years longer than I was supposed to, okay? Whose bait, by the end of the day, is gonna get to the bottom of the lake more? The dude with the 1/2 ounce. In fact, if you do the math, I said it on a show that aired 2 or 3 weeks ago, law of average, if I'm throwing a 1/2 ounce and you're throwing a 1/4 ounce, I'm going to get to the bottom of the lake 2 times as many as you by the end of the day. So I'm gonna have that many more shots on goal than somebody throwing a lighter lure. And really the only time I will use a 1/2 ounce or a 1/4 ounce is if I'm in about 7 foot of water or less, okay? The rest of the time, it is a 3/8, a half, a half, a half, and a 3/4. The other thing I can tell you is, and I've taped a lot of shows in the state of Wisconsin, y'all got some of the best smallmouth fishing in the world, okay? Here's what a 1/2 ounce drop shot does to smallmouth and heavily pressured largemouth. The reason I know this, I have a cameraman that loves, David, you met him, I believe. My cameraman loves to swim with the fishes all year long. And the thing he has said to me, when that bowling ball, you see that right there, how fast that fish reacted? That fish immediately sniped that bait. Is the one thing that I've learned is that rate of fall, as fast as that falls in front of his face, does the same thing that Van Dam talks about with a crankbait or a spinnerbait. You are getting a reaction bite on a notoriously slow presentation, okay? One other big keys to whenever you're drop shot, okay? To me, the next most important thing is your line, okay? And we're gonna give some of this line away in probably the next 30 minutes. is I use braid to a fluorocarbon leader. That right there is Seagar Smackdown braid. I can see it. You obviously could tell I don't have the best eyes anymore. I can see that braid on the surface. If that bait gets to the bottom, okay? If that bait gets to the bottom, I could watch that braid on the surface if one pops it like that one did right there, okay? Those are like pet fish. The other thing is, if you notice on here, like you could see this, Neil, my knot is way down in the spool, okay? That right there, if you measure that, my knot, so there's my braided line, there's my Seagar Tatsu leader right there, okay? You're looking at about 15 to 20 feet, all right? The reason being, the FG knot, number one, does anybody tie an FG knot? You do. Took you a while to learn it. You are declining ever tying an FG. Here's what I can tell you about an FG knot. It is one of the strongest, smoothest knots to come through your guides. So strong, but takes a lot of practice. But what you get out of that longer leader, okay, that bait looks so natural in the water. The only time that I'll tie a short leader is if I'm target fishing, if I'm dock fishing, if I'm fishing laydowns. I want that strength near the bait. The biggest thing that you're gonna get, okay? The biggest thing that you're gonna get from that longer leader, that bait is gonna look so natural on the bottom, okay? So natural. The other thing, if you notice, like if you watch Zona show, I like frogging, I like flipping, I like boat docking, because I like setting the hook really hard. I don't know what it is, everybody does, right? There's nothing better than a frog bite. If you notice every one of these fish that have bit, all I do is pull up. With a drop shot, that's a number 2 Trocar drop shot hook. If you crack one, what will happen, you'll actually tear out of their mouth. Like if you drop slack line with a drop shot and hit them, more than likely that little spider is gonna cut its way out of their mouth, okay? So the biggest thing is when I get a bite with a drop shot, okay? All I do is pull up like that right there. That fish is owned. He is going nowhere. The other thing, with that heavy weight, like it's kind of easy here in the hog trough because they're all sitting right there. It makes you so efficient to cover water and throw that, reach, especially when we get into July, August, reach out and touch somebody because those fish have been so pressured. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times on a lot of the lakes that I grew up fishing, I'll let my bait get to the bottom. I'm gonna shake it 2 or 3 times. I'm gonna reel it in as fast as I can and let it get to the bottom again because that's when most of the bites come. The other thing, most of the rods that I use, I get this question a lot, and we can answer more questions, thank you so much, as I get down. Basically that rod right there, this is a Lew's 6'10". All of the rods that I've designed for Lew's, I don't talk about fast power, slow power, medium, I don't do any of that. When I say this is a 4 power, it's got about 4 guides of tip and the rest of it is backbone. The majority of the big uns that you lose them in 2 different places. The end of your cast, when they jump and you go, ooh, and they throw your junk back at you, or when they start bulldogging next to the boat. Most of the drop shot rods I use are 6'10", 7 foot, 7'2", okay? A lot of people back in the day said 6'6", stuff like that. I would never use a 6'6" rod and let a bass have leverage over me. A 7 foot, a 7'2", a 7'4", you have leverage over them. At the end of the cast, and then when they start doing that business next to the boat, and you're like, oh, when is he gonna stop? If you have a longer rod, you command him, okay? So I'm gonna get down, we're gonna do question and answer. You guys wanna give a bunch of stuff away, right? Okay, like I said, thank you. So there's the drop shot seminar. Thank you. I'm gonna drop some stuff down real quick. And we can talk about anything today. Okay, I'm gonna throw this down to you. Say it again. I dropped my sunglasses. My readers, you can give them to Grandpa. Folks, Grandpa's a friend. I was able to say that. So real quick, I think we're gonna hand out some tickets and do more giveaways. And we can talk about absolutely anything. Give that to somebody to walk through. Can we do that? Oh, so you guys already have the tickets? All right, I didn't put 2 and 2 together right there. Sorry. We'll just throw that up there. Okay. Ask anything. Fire away. Go and just scream it so I can hear it. Question is, what knot do I use to my actual hook? So I talked about an FG, which basically is from leader to braid. For the hook, I use what I call a shark knot, okay? I fished with a shark fisherman in Key West 25 years ago, and he tied this knot with fluorocarbon really, really fast. And I said, what knot is that? He goes, there's not a name for it. I said, it's a shark knot. Anyway, it was 20-pound Seagar Brazex, and I caught like a 9-foot lemon shark, and I said, dude, do that knot again. And really what it is, it's gonna have 3 tags. You're gonna do it like a Palomar 7 times, drop it back through. If you Google Mark Zona shark knot, it's on the internet, and then I'm gonna drop back through the eye of the hook to make that bait. See how that bait sticks out? Dropping back through the eye is gonna make that bait stick out. But to me, for fluorocarbon, the shark knot is the best I've ever found. Good question. Tag is back through. You'll cut, when you see the knot, you'll cut the loop. His question is, when am I going to become a cheesehead? Well, I got news, bud. That's a good question. It was a good question. I am happy the NFC North is really, really good right now. I'm very unhappy the NFC North is really, really good right now. Listen, I live in Michigan, but I'm almost like, and you all know who the Chicago Cubs are, right? I was a South Side, yeah, exactly, I'm with you. I was a South Sider. I was always a White Sox fan, but I always remember my Cubs buddies. They're like, man, just next year, next year, next year. I have turned into that as a Bears fan. But whenever the Packers play the Lions, I'm a big-time Packers fan. Bears season ticket holder, boo him right now. Boo him. Not from me. His question is, have I tried the weighted braid that they have? No. I throw, and actually, if you would give this man, did we bring some PE? Did we? There is a new braid that is a very thin diameter from Seagar. This right here, PEX8. It is so much thinner than this braid right here, okay? So much thinner than this. And it almost acts like a weighted braid because it cuts the water, the density of the water so fast. To me, that right there, for guys that finesse fish, gals that finesse fish a lot, is the best I've ever used in my lifetime, ever. And I've used all of the JDMs that Seagar makes almost to a fault. Here's the best thing. Take the tips of your hook off of your frog. turn them into daggers, number one. The other thing, whenever you're frogging, slack line them and hit them. Don't pull hook set, okay? The other thing, that braid is such key. Straight braid, never anything else. Like this year, I use Tactics braid, and it's very serrated. You know this. You guys that frog, like Wisconsin's a great frog state. The biggest thing you want to do where things go wrong with a frog is that your braided line, or if you're throwing a mono acts like a rubber band, okay? That braided line digs and cuts any grass around them, okay? The other thing is, if you're losing fish, up the length of your rod and the speed of your reel, okay? Great question. Tips on glide bait fishing and what is my favorite glide bait. Where I live in Michigan, I live in the biggest Amish community in the Midwest called Shipshewana. Anybody know where Shipshewana is? It's right on the border. Them old boys are good making wood baits. Every glide bait that I truly throw is made in a guy's Dremel shop. He's slower than molasses, and I don't say anything to him, okay? The biggest tip to glide bait fishing, do it. You gotta do it. Glide bait fishing is eerily similar to frog fishing. It's like swim bait fishing. You gotta do it. You know what I'm saying? The other thing is, generally, the best glide bait fishing is after the spawn, okay? A lot of our fish, the ones you want to catch on a glide bait, yeah, you can go out when the water's 50 degrees and you can catch a big one on a glide bait, okay? The biggest thing with a glide, after they spawn, they have got to build up metabolism quickly. To me, the 30 days after a spawn is when you want to lock a glide in your hand. It's good before, it's way better after. And my lakes on the other side, the lakes that I fish on the other side of the big lake, they're just like these. Generally, when you start snooping at 60 to 70, that's when they're hunting. Look, they've been on a bed making babies for 30 days. They want to get revenge on those bluegill that have been bugging them while they're doing their natural reproduction. That's when a glide bait is at its best. His question is, have I ever thought about doing a peacock bass fishing show? I have. The most world class are down in the Amazon. Florida, I know it goes on in a lot of the canals in Florida. I've caught a ton of them. If I was gonna do it, I would go to the Amazon, but I don't like leaving our country. Sorry, I'm one of those dudes. I don't know that it's in my cards. I don't know it's in my cards. Say it again. Question is, if you're in heavy muck, what is the best drop shot style weight? I use a teardrop, and that's all I use. That's all I use. The other side is, if there's a lot of muck on the bottom, a lot of times I'm not gonna go to a drop shot. If there's too much. Like there's a certain lake that I grew up since I was his age, since I was 9. I'm not gonna fish it because the silt is basically 12 inches. I'm gonna fish something that'll stay above it. Great question. Does water temperature dictate size of bait that I'm using? Generally, throughout the year, okay, I generally throw 2 baits. I throw a baby Z2, okay, and I throw a Strike King half shell. I designed that half shell, selfishly, I designed it for our Midwest lakes because we have mayflies. It looks just like a wiggler that comes up through the bottom to the surface, and they grab it, okay? When I tend to upgrade is our bass, their forage, there's a weird break off. Our bass's forage after the 4th of July generally goes from this big to about that big very quickly, and that will hold all the way into October. So I'm gonna go to a filler worm. I'm gonna go to a big Z2. That's from Lake St. Clair to Sturgeon Bay to Escanaba. And the breaking point generally, I don't look at water temp, I look at time of year. It just seems like that bigger Z2 mimics a bigger perch smelt in alewife that they tend to get on basically from 4th of July to Halloween. Great question, go ahead. That's the most impossible question I could ever imagine. Her question is, so she's from Minnesota, right? And you're throwing a big glide bait that cost you, let's say you bought a cheaper one for $70. And a pike comes up and eats it. What's the best advice I could give you? Fish lake that have less pike. And look, I've seen you at many seminars. I've seen you at Bassmaster Classics. The only other thing you could do is use a steel leader. The problem with a steel leader, it does kill action of a glide to some extent. What's funny is how old are you dudes? 21. A lot of us think that glide baits came out in the last 5 years. Chuck, have glide baits been around since the beginning of time? They have been around for the better side. And here's how, like I said, my community college that I went to for 7 years for an associate's, I'll let it out. We're getting personal. I've done this long enough. We can be friends. I would catch a big smallmouth or a big largemouth when I was fishing. Anybody know Pete Mena?
He was here yesterday.
Right? And I'd unhook a 5-pound largemouth and let it go and go, man, I hope I catch a muskie. With the light bulb never going off, maybe I ought to tie that on bass fishing, right? Glide bait's been around for so long. The best advice I can give you, if you're losing a lot of money, glide bait, throwing high dollar jerk baits, find a lake that has less population of the wolf. Big Bay to knock in August. Get closer to the main lake, okay? Those fish do really, and I've taped on Big Bay and Little Bay and some of those islands that are way out there that I call Raptors Island. It's not called Raptors Island. Whether it's on the island or it's in Big Bay or in Little Bay, what they do in May, the first thing they go to is a river mouth. They go to a river mouth because it's pumping out 2 to 3 degree warmer water. Like I will sit and study Google Earth in April to know right where I'm going in May. My wife will say you're the biggest dork. You've been looking at Google Earth for 37 days. But you can learn more about Big Bay staring at Google Earth than actually driving around, because that's why it's called Big Bay. But after those fish get to the river mouths, they break up. They tend to go to the most reed-infested areas to reproduce. And then the first thing they do is they're headed closer to the main lake, okay? Like Little Bay, Big Bay, and then there's a series of points in between on the main lake. Start right there, unless I'm taping. His question is, what is the deepest I've ever fished for largemouth? A show aired 2 years ago that I took a lot of arrows over, okay? The deepest I had ever fished for and caught largemouth, say 35 all the way to 50 feet of water, okay? I taped a show on Gull Lake, okay? Doesn't have crazy numbers, got them biggins. They're all smelt eaters, okay? All smelt eaters. And I would take that voodoo box, that forward-facing sonar, and I'd watch them pin the smelt to the surface, and after they pin them, they would get down to the bottom in less than 2 seconds. in 70 to 80 feet of water, right? And I started catching them on the bottom out there, on the bottom, 70, 80, 90 feet of water. And here's what's amazing is, this is why a lot of people threw arrows. They said their bladder is gonna expand, and they're like a grouper, their bladder was so acclimated to up, down, in a minute. You put them in the live well and they'd be perfectly horizontal, okay? Here's what I'll tell you. If a lake that you fish has forage that lives out in 60, 70, 80 feet of water, the fish have been out there for probably centuries. We just never had the technology to find them, okay? Best advice for college anglers. Awesome question. Can you give him something? One of the biggest questions that I get is what you just asked. Best advice for college anglers. Anybody see when my kids used to be on my show, my twin boys? Okay? Here's the best advice I gave them. Never let them see you coming. Okay? The most important advice I could give my kids, tow, time on water, and time on water. And what's funny was when they got out of high school, they were already seasoned enough to fish against men. And the biggest thing was time on water. Don't worry about chat boards and direct messages. I said, you come in there, you wear a t-shirt, and you pound them. And you keep pounding them. But the only way to do that is time on water. Dude, when your friends think you spend too much time on water, spend more. Spend more. That's the best advice. The second thing would be, I am horrified of public speaking. I am saying that with 100% honesty. I took a little class at that college just because there was a hottie that I liked with speech and communications. Taking a speech and communications class was the smartest thing I've ever done in my lifetime. Because when I started television, you could tell me that camera, right where Chauncey is on ESPN, you could tell me there's 6 million people watching. I don't care about that. But if I had to get up in front of 3 6th grade kids and do a fishing seminar, shaking like a leaf. And public speaking, taking a speech and communications class, and don't get me wrong, I cut a lot of school just to go bass fishing, but I went to that, I had ulterior motives for that speech and communications at the time. I had no idea what it would do later in my life for me. Awesome question. His question is Lake Erie, Buffalo, middle of summer. Get out there deep. Get out there and what I always say, find the end of the highway, okay? The end of the highway where that rock stops and either meets mud or sand. And generally, Dunkirk to Buffalo, that depth is 45 to 65 foot the entire way. Find where that rock ends, because basically it's a stop sign for them. They keep going deeper, okay? It's a stop sign for them, and they'll stop at the end of that rock. That's the most consistent and fastest way to find them in Buffalo. Very similar straight north of here. Very similar. When I'm looking at maps, what am I looking for to find a new lake to fish? If I get on Google Earth and the boat ramp is empty, that's where I want to be. I know that sounds horrible, okay? A lot of my shows I tape in an area of Minnesota that I never name, okay? I never name it, that area. Every single lake is good. And when I go there for last year, my wife was gonna divorce me because I literally went there the month of July. I went down to ICAST to see Seagar, for 22 hours. I left my boat up there and went right back. What was funny was I had a game warden stop me at one of the boat ramps. Nice dude. And he said, y'all get he called it a movie. He goes, y'all get a movie? I said, yeah, got a movie. And he goes, you're here a lot, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. And he said, I noticed you never say where you're at when you're up here. I said, no, I'm not gonna do that. And he looked at me, he goes, you have a good day. Keep that up. So there you go. I really do, I try, as time's gone on, I try to look to stay ahead of bites. And to stay ahead of bites, you go to places where they're not being bugged. Now, you strike out a lot, but boy, when you hit, we all think this when you find a school of bass on a lake that gets pressured, man, I hope nobody finds this. A lot of those lakes, there's no worries, nobody finds it. The Great Lakes are the same. I tend to try to fish areas now, like I fished an area that aired 3 weeks ago where we had a 32-pound stringer, a smallmouth. I weighed him on the show. I purposely went there because there was not going to be there'll be a lot of pressure now, but I try to go where there's less pressure. Best color for Geneva smallmouth, baby Z2 Arkansas shad. It looks just like their babies, and what I've learned about a smallmouth, they like to protect their babies for all of about 10 days, and they turn into cannibals. Baby Z2 Arkansas shiner, or color IU, AYU. Great question. Can you run him something? Oh my gosh. All right. Wow, I never thought that would happen in West Allis, Wisconsin. What do I think of Cane Creek in Star City, Arkansas? And what's the best advice to catch them there? That is not a question I thought would be asked here today. Right now is the best time to fish Cane Creek. Like every show that I've shot there, a lot of them I don't name. The other thing about Cane Creek, it's a minefield. You can't run, you gotta idle and destroy your boat through the process. Here's what I can tell you, when you come out of that little dirty, nasty, naughty boat ramp, you see the riprap to the right and it gets shallower up to the left. I always come out, go left. Wherever you see those cows walking in the water, that's where I'm gonna be. I'm gonna tell Hackney that you brought that up. I spent a spring break there with him. Question is, what size hook am I using for my drop shot? Generally, two answers right there. A 2 or a 4 for the smaller baits. Generally, when I was hooking them up in here, you use a 2 and a 4, even though it's a little spider hook, you own them if you don't crack them. The only time I'll go up to a 1/0 is when I go up to that bigger bait, a bigger Z2. Generally, a 2 and a 4, it covers 80% of my needs. Good question. Say it again. Question, yeah, that's a great question. Did you already win something? All right, here's something. His question is, do I ever Texas rig or Texpose a bait on here? Absolutely, if I'm constantly hanging up. If I'm fishing an edge of a milfoil line or a blacktop coontail line and that open hook is getting hooked up, that's when I'll go, and then I'll go to a rebar style, a straight shank. I never ever use an offset, always a straight shank, because you own them. But again, you're not cracking them when they bite, okay? Two more, real quick. Wait, say that again. What show was that? Mille Lacs? It was St. Clair. It was St. Clair with Brent Ayler. Wow. His question is, I had a spot in my GPS. Does anybody know Brent Ayler? Brent Ayler is one of the best bass fishermen, hands down, bar none, on earth. And I found a big school on the south side of St. Clair. Naturally, we got there to tape, and we don't catch nothing, right? We're headed back to the U.S. side. And I see a series of waypoints. I said, dude, I ain't fished here. It was longer than 6 years. The last time I fished there, have you guys ever heard of the Ever Start series? You have? I took a second place finish in the Ever Starts back before you were born and just made the comment, hey, let's stop right here and make a rip down this. And it seemed like every giant was there. And Ayler looked at me and said, dude, you could have came here at 7 in the morning instead of 3 in the afternoon. And the whole thing was, there was food. I've always made a joke, but it's not a joke on Zona Show, that a smallmouth is like a velociraptor, okay? But I say that with all seriousness. What a smallmouth will, you could have the best spot where my man's sitting right there. If there's no food, he is not gonna hang there, okay? What a smallmouth will do is rotate, clean areas out of forage, move on, clean another area out, come back and clean it out. A smallmouth tends to want to roll with his buddies, like velociraptors do, I guess, on Jurassic Park, and wipe areas out of food. That's the biggest thing I look for, man, when I'm smallmouthing, is stuff that they can eat. Like when I go to Lake St. Clair, or I go up to Sturgeon Bay or Escanaba, I never look at where there's a bass boat. You show me where there's a perch boat, I will be in his back pocket all week. It's a good tip right there, actually. One more. Post-spawn walleyes on the Canadian Shield Lakes. I would be catching them by accident if I caught them. It's so terrible. I actually had walleye for dinner last night. The only place I really fish for walleye is the Detroit River in April. So for smallmouth on the Shield Lakes, post-spawn, a topwater, and a topwater. On all of those Shield Lakes, post-spawn, there is a window, like up near what is called Eli. I did all that. Let me give a quick story about that real quick. Are we in a hurry? What time we got? Okay. Yes, we're gonna have a contest at the end. We're gonna give some stuff away. Say it again. Yeah, we are not giving away the fishing trip. No, the fishing trip is this week. Yeah, somebody is gonna win a trip to fish St. Clair with me. Trip for 2. I'm hoping it's one of you. I feel like we got close today. I like the guy with the Bears season tickets, but anyway, anybody's welcome. There is a window after they spawn where they'll stay shallow. And to me, like the last time I went with my boss, Jerry McInnes, who did the fishing hole. And it was like a week after spawn. It's total post-spawn. It was the best topwater fishing I've ever seen. But I'll tell you what happened was, it was all paddle in, paddle out, okay? I was a little bit older than you. I was in my probably late 20s, early 30s. And we come through one of them lakes, okay? And I can't see across this lake. I was like, well, certainly, Jerry, we're here. Let's get that tent ready, right? Let's get the tent ready. He's like, we got to get across this one. Dude, I could not see the end of it, right? All I could tell you is, by the time we got back in civilization, 10 days later, I never wanted to see an oar of a canoe again in my entire life. But it was a very special trip. Favorite trailer on a 1/2 ounce bladed jig for largemouth, I use a blade minnow, a Strike King Rage blade minnow. The only time I change my trailer is when I'm in 3 foot of water and less. I'll put something that'll make it hover better, like a raged bug. It'll make that bladed jig stay up. If you tie on a 1/2 ounce, a 5/8 ounce with a blade minnow, you're good to go. And generally, I throw a green pumpkin and I'll dot it with a little orange. Good question. Folks, I gotta say, I like the Bears question. Do you want this drop shot? You want the drop shot? Yeah? All right, I'm gonna give you the drop shot. You can have the rod. Have a good summer. Good job, dude. Good job. All right, we're gonna give some stuff away real quick. Yeah?
What do you got? What do you got?
How much more stuff do you have down there? Got it. All right. You just said straight out you need the line. You drove a long way. You can have the line. Give it up for him. All right, you ready? 270-6810. Yes. You'll love that for finesse fishing. Good job. Good job. Cigar PEX8. 270-6885. Two 270-6826.
What's that?
See, I'm not checking y'all's tickets. I'm not sure you're being honest with me right now. Like, you've won everything today. 2 more hats, and then we're going to give a Zona rod away, okay?
Okay, so
270-6835. Right there. Two 270-68. I feel like this might be in the family. 6838. All right, we're going to give away now Lou's Mark Zona design rod. Real, okay? Not playing. I'm not playing here. I'm gonna let you draw that. Just draw one, pull one. 270-67. Who's in it? Who's in it right now? Okay, I feel like this side's leading the way. 679. Huh? Who's still in it? 6. We get to go again. Are you kidding? Does nobody have that? I'm going to say it again. 6796. Once. Twice. 270. 67. Oh. 9. Who's in it? Ooh. 8. Folks, he's got a child in his hand. Give it up for him. Hey, seriously? Good job, dude. Thank you so much. Have a great fishing season.